Please stand if you're able and willing for the invocation, which will be done by video. Thank you, Father, for being here, and also the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. O God of us all, we thank you and praise you for the gift and beauty of this day that you have made. We pray that by the power of your Spirit, you will help us to rejoice and to be glad in it. O great lover of us all, thank you for living and loving in us and through us. May all that we do flow from our deep connection with you and each other. Help us to become a community that vulnerably shares each other's burdens, most especially during this difficult time. Listen to our hearts' longings for the healing of our world. We give thanks that you are with us, that you are for us, and that you have begun a good work in us, that you will bring to completion in your own time and in your own way. We give thanks for these women and men who serve you. Bless them with wisdom, for we entrust them to you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I forgot to give the signal to the tech person. I hope we're rolling. Are we online? Are we good? All right, got the thumbs up. Week 2 of not having anyone here for our live meetings. Again, for those of you who are watching from home, you can follow along on YouTube and comment on the items of the agenda, and then the clerk will pass your comments on to us. So please feel free to still give us your input. We are doing our best to have an open meeting while still protecting the health and welfare of our citizens. So, Madam Clerk. Oh, approval of minutes, excuse me. We're good. Is there any comments or proposed amendments to the amendments of the regular meeting on April 7th, 2020? If there is no comments or suggested amendments, then I will make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. With the result of 7 yeas and 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 12.
So discussion on consent agenda items 1 through 12. Is there proposed amendments to or proposed pulling any items off of the consent agenda at this time? See now, with no discussion and no motions, I will make a motion that we accept consent agenda items 1 through 12.
Second.
There has been a motion and seconded. Any discussion? See none. The clerk will open the roll. Members cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas and 0 nays, the consent agenda items 1 through 12 does pass. Madam Clerk.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated April 13th, 2020.
Good morning, Mayor and
morning.
City Council. Melinda Walker, Purchasing Manager for City of Wichita. I have the engineering bids. We have Aquatics Master Plan, Phase 1B, Recommendations Simpson Construction Services for the base bid and alternates 1A through alternate 2 for $3,362,400. For Aquatics Master Plan Phase 1B, water playground improvements. Sorry, it didn't. There we go. I want 1A. Aquatics Master Plan Phase 1A, swimming pool improvements, Donlinger and Sons Construction, base bid, alternates 1 and 2A and 2B, for an aggregate total of $7,446,643.06. And it's subject to City Council approval for the new engineer's estimate and budget. For purchasing, we have miscellaneous air, fuel, and oil filters, Central Power Systems and Services LLC. It's a percentage discount for an annual contract of 67%. We have open requests for proposals for the city. And if you want to become a registered vendor or propose on one of our solicitations, please go to our city's procurement website and approve the bid awards as recommended.
Any questions or comments? See none, do we have any questions or comments from YouTube?
No.
See none. Is this anyone's particular district? It looks like it's not. With that, I will make a motion to receive and file report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
The proposed new Northwest Water Treatment Plant. So when we look at the water infrastructure finance and the WIFIA loan that we're talking about 49% of the project cost will be covered by this loan, the loan that we're here to talk about today. The 48% of it will be covered by the state revolving loan fund. And then we will be using a combination of cash and revenue bonds, about 3%, to cover the remainder. We'll also be using cash to pay for the payments up front and then for reimbursement later by the two loans. The WIFIA terms have been negotiated. They're presented today in the WIFIA credit agreement, which is attached. And the state revolving fund loan terms are currently being negotiated, and a loan agreement will be presented later this year. Repayment is a deferral to 5 years after construction. That's one of the things that makes this loan so attractive. In other words, we figure about 4 years to 5 years to build the treatment plant, and it's a full 5 years after that we start the payment back. In the meantime, we have very low fixed interest rates. Again, another one of the advantages of this WIFIA loan. When you look at the loan, what we expect to have the interest rate locked in, and what we would normally have to pay with using revenue bonds, municipal bonds, the savings over the life of the loan are about $69 million. So as you can see, the savings of being able to go with WIFIA are significant, and it's one of the reasons we spent such time and made such efforts to secure this WIFIA loan. So in the basic credit terms of this loan, $280 million, 860,714. That's the maximum principal with the capitalized interest excluded. The interest rate will be set on the effective date, April 23rd, and we'll talk about that, the timeline a little bit here later. And the way that that's calculated is by adding 0.01% to the rate of state and local government securities with the similar length of repayment. The first payment due will be April 1st, 2029, with a final payment due October 1st, 2059. When you look at the rate increases that we've been anticipating to pay for this very necessary and significant expenditure for our water utility, the new Northwest Water Treatment Plant, the debt payments that were estimated by EPA are absolutely in line with our previous estimates, which means that the rate projections, which we've already shared with council, should still be valid. The chart over on the right-hand side of the screen shows what we believe the combined water and sewer rate increases will be year by year. And this is consistent with what the council has already seen, so no surprises there. And then to reflect this, staff will be coming back this year rate increases for 2021. Staff will be coming back the end of this year, November or December, for council's approval. As far as a legal process involved, the City Council will consider approving this item today with the idea that it's not fully passed until the reading of the second reading of the ordinance, which is scheduled for April 21st. That's the second reading, and it'll be on consent. An official document signing is tentatively scheduled for April 22nd, the following day, and that will involve the mayor and some staff. And then following the actual official document signing, that's the date that the interest rate will actually be set. It'll be set on April 23rd and inserted into the WIFIA credit agreement. That's one of the things that we're asking council to approve, and that the WIFIA, the actual agreement then will be in full effect once it's validated by the Kansas Attorney General, which is expected somewhere around May of this year, so not a long delay. The WIFIA funding process, they'll be made available in increments estimated to cover the expenses for each year, and any unused funds will roll forward for use in the next year. What will happen is these project expenses will be paid with cash, water utility cash, and then reimbursed by EPA under the loan agreement within 15 days of city staff submitting the required forms. So there's bookkeeping that's involved, and we need to make sure that we submit that to get reimbursement from the fund, from the loan. The next steps in this whole process is we are in negotiations presently with the state on the state revolving fund terms, and that we look at in August or September, sometime late summer of this year, we'll be bringing forward to council for your approval similar loan agreement, but with the state instead of with the EPA, and looking for a final notice to proceed. If all the actions are approved, phase 2 construction would be given sometime in October of this year with an expected completion date of early 2025. Staff's recommendation is that council approve the WIFIA credit agreement, authorize staff to insert the interest rates and the repayment schedule, and adopt the resolution, all subject to final passage of the ordinance, place the ordinance on first reading, and authorize the necessary signatures. And with that, I stand for any questions. I've also got staff in the room in case you have some questions about more detailed specifics on the loan. Thank you.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. Alan, if you could jump back to slide 15 for me, please. Yes.
Here you go, sir.
Thank you. So I wanted to understand the definition of combined rate increases. Is that also related to the BNR proposal project? And then what rate increases are we expecting in 21? What is that tied to?
So the answer to the first question, Council Member and Mr. Mayor, is yes, those are indicative of also having the biological nutrient removal project in the sewer side. These funds are these raises are combined increases, both water to cover both water rate increases and sewer rate increases. It's the combined effect of both of those. And in this, on the sewer side, it does include the BNR project in those rate projections. As far as what we'll be asking for in 2021 is something very close to 5%, which is what we've been talking about for some time now with council when we looked at approving the guaranteed maximum price for the project, what the effect would be. It's about 5% all the way out to 2028. That's below what we consider to be the national average as published somewhere around 6%. So even though there are a few years there of 5%, that's still below the national average of combined water sewer rate increases.
Okay, good. I thought that's what you were going to say. I just wanted to make sure and reiterate it to the public because I didn't think we're talking about anything new. It was just stuff that we'd already projected. So that's good to know. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a follow-up question to Councilmember Fry. So, Alan, does the rate increases, including BNR, does that include that we believe that we will get WIFIA with the BNR?
Yes, Councilmember Claycomb and Mr. Mayor. The rate projections that you're seeing here have assumptions built into them. Number one, that we'll be going ahead with the BNR, the new sewer treatment plant. And one of the assumptions for that is that we will successfully be able to secure WIFIA funding for that project as well.
Thank you.
I have a question. I was speaking with a constituent yesterday, and they had a question about the 280 million loan that has excluded capital interest, but the request for the revenue bond is at 331 million. The difference is about 50 million, and if the capital interest is excluded in the 280, then why are we asking for 331 million?
Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to bring Joe Norton up to the podium to answer your question.
Of course, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Joe Norton with Gilmore and Bell, the city's bond council,
Good morning.
and members of the city council. The $280 million number is the actual capital cost that will be advanced by the EPA and WIFIA to pay project costs. In addition to that, as part of the requirement or part of the benefit, I guess, of not having to make a payment for, in essence, 9 years, the interest accruing on the outstanding balance advanced will be capitalized. In other words, it will be added on to the principal component and re-amortized when the payments start in 2029. So that's the differential. The calculations were made based on a conservative estimate of what the interest rate would be. And for state law purposes, we have to set a maximum principal repayment component, and that is the $331 million number. We think that will be slightly less, but it just depends on how accelerated the draws will be and when monies are advanced and the interest accrued on those over time until the loan is amortized and starts payment.
So the 50 million extra is just an estimate. That's just going upwards to 50 million extra depending on what the interest rate is, or the acquired interest is towards the end of this loan. Is that correct? Doesn't have to be 50 million, might be less. Okay, but it won't exceed 50 million. All right, I think that answers my question. Thank you, sir. Other questions?
Thank you.
See none, if there is no further discussion, a motion would be in order. I will make. Oh, Chair recognizes Vice Mayor Clayco.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a comment on this. I know that staff worked really hard on this WIFIA application. I know that it was before I even came on council that they began some of this work, and I just really want to say thank you. I think it's been a lot of work. I know I read the original WIFIA application, and I know how much work that was, and I know the negotiation of this has really been a lot of work. So, Alan, please say thank you to your staff. I really do appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Thank you, Vice.
in
Mr.
addition,
Manager.
yeah, thank you. In addition to Alan and his staff, who I also want to thank because they've put a number of years into this process, I also want to thank EPA. Sometimes we forget that if we didn't have a great work relationship with the agency that's responsible for the funding, that we probably wouldn't be able to move very far with this. And the regional office as well as the DC staff have been great to work with. And the last thing I want to note is that sometimes people call into question the trips that we make to Washington. And I can tell you from my experience that if the council had not met with EPA staff for 2 or 3 years in a row, and actually in one of those sessions really just roll up the sleeves and debrief over an unsuccessful application to determine what we could do to make our application successful. As a result of that, we're saving the ratepayers $69 million, and I think that's a pretty significant return on an investment. And I appreciate the council taking the time to help develop those relationships in DC.
Duly noted, the relationships do matter. In this case, we could put a price tag on that where it looks like it saved us $69 million. I just have one follow-up question, and it was when I was asking my original question, it kind of escaped me. Alan, do you know the estimated interest rate? Have you guys been able to estimate that going outward?
Like I said, Mr. Mayor, like I said, it's based on it's a formula calculated by adding a 0.01% to the state, local, and government securities. If it were to lock in today, that would be 1.36%. So as you can see, that is a very low interest rate.
And it has the possibility of going up depending on the formula, depending on variations in the market?
Yes, but it's, yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. It depends on the actual execution at the time. It will be set on the signing of the contract the day following that on the 23rd. So you're right, it's an estimate at this point.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further comments or questions concerning this matter? See none. Madam Clerk, is there anything from the...
There are no comments.
No comments from the public. All right, so with that, I will make a motion to approve the WIFIA credit agreement, adopt the resolution, and authorize staff to insert interest rates and payment schedule, all subject to final passage of the ordinance, place the ordinance on first reading, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion? See no discussion. Clerk will open the roll, and members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Contract for providing pre-employment examinations and substance abuse screens.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and City
Good
Council.
morning.
I'm Chris
Welcome.
Besricky, the HR Director. For your consideration and approval is a proposed contract with Kelly Compliance, a local firm. It is a 1-year contract with an option to renew for 4 years thereafter. It provides for pre-employment physical examinations and substance abuse screens. Based on the contract and some of staff's work, we estimate that our cost will be $20,000 lower annually than in the past. We sent an RFP to 19 firms. 2 responded, one was Kelly Compliance and Via Christie. The contract effective date is for May 1st of 2020 through April 30th of 2021. The pre-employment physicals and drug screening required for all new hires, transfers, and promotions. In any given year, that would probably involve about 900 transactions. This lean process implemented by HR will reduce time and cost for the internal Department of Transportation, transfers, and promotions. The cost sheet is attached as part of the contract, and staff recommends the council approve the RFP.
Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, can you tell me who has the contract currently?
The current contract was with Via Christie.
Okay. And was it a 1 year that they had, and this is, or did they have a longer term?
They've been with us for the past 5 years, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, just to follow up to that question, is this contract with the new vendor, is this saving us money?
I'm sorry?
Is this contract with this new vendor, is this saving us money?
This will overall, we believe, lower the cost by $20,000 a year.
So $20,000 savings. Other questions or comments? See none. With that, I will make the motion to approve the contract and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor Claycomb from District 6. Is there any discussion on the motion? See none. Council will cast their votes since the clerk has opened the roll. Wait, no, one more.
Councilmember Blueball, would you cast your vote, please? Oops. Thank you.
With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance amendments pertaining to amusement parks and rides.
Welcome.
Okay.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Elizabeth Harlinsky, Department of Law. And before you is a proposed ordinance repealing Chapter 3.20 of the City Code. This chapter regulates amusement parks and rides. And the city has regulated both permanent and portable amusement rides since 2005. In 2010, in response to an accident involving an inflatable ride that resulted in the death of a child, the City Council adopted even more stringent standards. I'm sorry, let me back up. Regulation is accomplished by requiring an annual license for both amusement parks and permanent rides, as well as for businesses that rent temporary portable rides. Our current law also requires liability insurance, annual ride inspections to be performed by certified inspectors, and the training of ride operators. At the time that Chapter 3.20 was adopted, there was no similar regulation of this industry by the state of Kansas. There was an increase in the number of businesses that were renting the portable inflatable rides in the city, and this in turn led to some public safety concerns. And this created a need for regulation of this industry, and city staff was directed to prepare what is now our current ordinance. And in 2017, the legislature acted to address this issue on a statewide level by passing certain regulatory statutes. And again, in 2018, they passed what is known as the Kansas Amusement Ride Act. And this legislation became effective in May of 2018 and provides the same protection and regulation that is found in our current city code in Chapter 320. Specific regulations of the state law include registration of all permanent and portable amusement rides with the state, including inflatable rides. It requires an annual inspection of amusement rides by certified inspectors, and there is a requirement of liability insurance. And enforcement of these regulations is through the Department of Labor. The statutes also require notification of the Department of Labor of any accidents causing serious bodily injury, and it grants authority to the Department of Labor to conduct investigations of any accident that does occur. And the statute specifically allows for local regulation of amusement rides, but that regulation cannot conflict with state law. And a comparison of the regulatory schemes of the city and the state shows that our code is currently less stringent than state law, and thus is in conflict with state law. So there is a choice here whether to amend our local ordinance or repeal and allow the state to take over the enforcement or continue with the enforcement that they now have. And a brief overview of some of the amendments that would be required if we were to maintain our current code. We have different levels of education and qualification of inspectors that are allowed to certify rides, so changes would need to be made there. The city does not currently have the authority to conduct investigations following accidents, so we would need to amend that into the code. We would need to increase the aggregate amount of liability insurance required over that is currently required. Right now, we require a $1 million per occurrence limit, and the state requires $1 million per occurrence with a $2 million aggregate. And finally, we'd have to do some slight amendment of the penalty provisions of the city code to be in conformity with state law. There's a few additional amendments that aren't on this slide that we would have to consider. State law requires amusement ride owners and operators to provide certification that each ride to be operated meets the qualifications of the American Society for Testing and Materials. These are international standards, and they have to show that their rides are in compliance with that requirement. State law also places a requirement on ride patrons to notify a ride operator or owner of any injury they receive from the operation of the ride, and they have to do it prior to leaving the premises, or if they're injured to the point that they cannot report, then they must do it as soon as possible. And ride operators are required to post a notice of this requirement. State law also requires daily inspections be performed of rides that are operated, and that records of those daily inspections, it's in the form of a checklist, must be kept for 3 years. And the state statute specifically allows the Attorney General or the appropriate county or district attorney to seek an order from the district court enjoining the operation of any amusement ride that is operating in violation of state law. The current city ordinance has none of these requirements, and amendments would be needed to bring our code into compliance with those. Staff is recommending repeal of Chapter 3.20. This would allow the regulation of amusement rides to be undertaken by the Department of Labor under the Kansas Amusement Ride Act. There may be some loss of license revenue. In past years, that revenue has been approximately $5,000 per year. However, a check yesterday with the city's licensing section indicates that so far this year, we have had only one renewal application for such a license. This is a bit unusual. These renewals are all of them are due either on April 30th or May 1st, so they should be coming in by now. And we've only had one, and the lack of applications may well be due to the current shutdown of businesses and cancellation of events where these rides would be utilized in response to the COVID-19 virus. An additional impact of repeal, this would eliminate a duplicitous layer of regulation that's no longer needed due to the state's enforcement. And repeal would reduce the cost of doing business in Wichita for members of this industry. The current fees that we impose by ordinance, we have a $25 non-refundable application fee. An amusement park fee is $600 per year. And for up to 20 or more individual temporary rides, it's $600 annually. For fewer than 20 rides, it is $30 per ride. The expected outcomes, if the proposed amendment is adopted, resulting in the repeal of Chapter 3.20, there would be continuous enforcement on the state level by the Department of Labor. We would eliminate the need to amend our local ordinance. Public safety would continue to be protected by the enforcement of this more rigorous state law. And we would eliminate redundant fees and regulation of businesses. And there's no question that the city code has been an effective enforcement tool and has enhanced public safety regarding amusement rides. The city council implemented this regulation because it was needed and there was no other avenue of regulation. However, now that the state has implemented laws that provide the needed oversight of this industry, we have a double layer of regulation imposed by two different governmental entities. And because this results in an efficient application of resources and places an additional burden on the industry, it is the recommendation of city staff that council repeal Chapter 3.20 of the city code. Open for any questions.
Questions on the item? So just to clarify, our current city code is in conflict because it's more open than the state statute.
It's less restricted, yes, and we can be more restricted, but we cannot be less restricted.
Of course, and there are no restrictions in this. There are no restrictions in the city code that add to the protection of our citizens that aren't already also in the state code. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, I think so.
So we lose no protections.
It's worded differently, but the protections are there.
Okay. And the revenue hit to our budget by repealing this is about $5,000 in revenue based on licensing fees.
That has been in prior years, yes. I checked again yesterday. We currently have 15 of these businesses licensed, And if all of them would reapply, that would make up the approximately $5,000. At this point, we only have the one renewal.
Okay, and those who are in the rides business, they are now paying a fee to the state, in which they didn't have to pay before 2017. So they're pretty much being double feed for operating in Wichita. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Other questions on a current item?
Mayor, I do have a comment or a question
A
from the
question
public.
from our online audience, Madam Clerk.
Lonnie Wright asked if, will the state inspect the ride before operation?
That's a good question. The question was, will the state inspect the ride before operation?
Yes, the state scheme requires a permit to operate a ride, and in order to get that permit, you must show that it's been inspected and that it meets the qualifications of, I'm sorry, that organization, the American Materials, I'm sorry, it's a long, American Society for Testing and Materials. They also have a registration fee. The state has a dual fee. You have to pay both a permit fee and a registration fee. And to get that registration, you also have to show other safety aspects of the ride.
Other questions from the public or from the bench? See none. It seems that I will make a motion to accept the staff recommendation of place the ordinance on first read and authorize all necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by Vice Mayor Claycomb. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their votes. For the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk.
2020 Community Services Block Grant Remainder Discretionary Application.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor,
Good
members of
morning.
council. I'm Sally Stang with the Housing and Community Services Department.
Welcome.
Thank you. Today I have for you an application for discretionary funds from the Community Service Block Grant. Just a few weeks ago, you authorized the submission of our annual allocation, and we were notified by the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation of additional funds available to us. We're missing our sorry. KHRC allocates funds to 8 community action programs in Kansas, and it is not moving for me. There we go. The discretionary funds are allocated through a competitive RFP process. So the Wichita-Sedgwick County Community Action Partnership, a division of Housing and Community Services Department, prepares the application for discretionary funds. Previously, in 2018, the city received an additional $40,000 under this process. KHRC invites eligible applicants to submit proposals for innovative projects by April 15th. They've earmarked up $14,787,000 to support innovative community and neighborhood-based initiatives related to CSBG Act. The period of availability will be extend through September 30th, 2021. Our timeline, we received guidance on the discretionary funding in late March 2020. Today, we review the discretionary funds application as it's due to KHRC tomorrow. We're proposing to implement an initiative to provide emergency housing relief assistance, so either rent payments or mortgage payments, for Sedgwick County citizens that have experienced hardships during the COVID-19 pandemic. The program will carry out the intended uses of CSBG funds in a community-based approach to address the effects of homelessness. And through a one-time financial assistance, the WSCAT will prevent households from entering into homeless situations, and through case management, ensure they remain in stable long-term housing. Individuals receiving assistance will work with a member of our team on increasing housing stability through the support and case management. We're also discussing additional funding for this purpose through the CARES Act. That will be coming soon. At this point, we're recommending the City Council approve the 2020 CSBG discretionary funding application in the amount of $14,787 and authorize the necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions you may have.
Questions on the item? See no questions. Any discussion from the public?
There are none.
There is none. With that, I'll make the motion to approve the federal fiscal year FFY 2020 Community Service Block Grant remainder discretionary funding application in the amount of $14,787 and grant funding upon receipt, and authorize the necessary signatures. But before I do that, I will recognize Brandon Johnson, who is council member for District 1. Councilmember Johnson.
Were you going to say?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I just had one question. Will this $14,787 be counted towards that $1 million fund for COVID-19 that could be reimbursed, or is it separate?
This is separate funding, specifically coming through, it is federal funding that's coming through the state, so it would not be eligible for reimbursement, but it is a separate new pot of funds. It won't be taken from any other source.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, Councilmember Johnson, I saw you kind of sneak up on the list and wasn't sure if this should have been your motion, but the motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. Is there any further discussion on the motion? See none. With that, we request that the clerk open up the rolls and that members cast their vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
ESG funding allocation for Humankind Ministries, Inc., Emergency Winter Shelter Services.
Hello again, Mr. Mayor, member of council. I'm Sally Stang again from the Housing and Community Services Department. This item I have for you is an ESG funding allocation for Humankind Ministries. The city of Wichita is an entitlement city, so we do receive funding from HUD for Community Service Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. The Emergency Solutions Grant Program provides funding to improve and operate homeless shelters, rapidly rehouse families and individuals experiencing homelessness, and prevent families and individuals from becoming homeless. In addition to the city's 2019-2020 annual funding allocation of $238,128, the city will receive $850,376 in additional ESG funding authorized under the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act. ESG funding authorized by the CARES Act must be used to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus pandemic among individuals and families who are homeless, and to support additional homeless assistance and homelessness prevention activities to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Humankind Ministries has requested ESG funding in the amount of $60,000 in order to continue operation of the organization's emergency winter shelter through the month of April 2020. The winter shelter is a no-barrier shelter for adult individuals and offers separate facilities for men and women. The shelter normally operates daily from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. during the harsh winter months. During the month of April, normal shelter activities will be modified in order to operate on a 24-hour basis with meals and showers and laundry services offered. Humankind will work with health clinics in order to serve individuals who become ill and will be offered isolation areas. Up to 90 individuals will be served between the two facilities with social distance practices in place. The proposed budget includes staffing, sanitizing and cleaning supplies, and personal protection equipment. This is just one activity that's happening in our community related to responding to COVID-19 among the homeless. The Continuum of Care, which is the group of homeless service agencies and community representatives, has been working with many partners to expand shelter capacity while maintaining social distancing and creating isolation spaces, working with Sedgwick County regarding testing, creating new spaces. And they established a continuum of care action team, partnering with Mental Health Associates and the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas, and it's funded through Continuum of Care Supportive Services funding through HUD. And they're providing case management for those awaiting test results. They're delivering meals to the homeless in isolation. They reached out to the Red Cross and received cots and blankets. They've been working with the Kansas KU School of Medicine, the emergency response team, the city, all kinds of looking for resources everywhere we can. The city is partnering, of course, to try and provide resources in this arena. So this $60,000 in CARES Act ESG will help expand the shelter capacity. We were also working with the fire marshal when evaluating the Old Downtown Library for possible use to shelter and quarantine the homeless. This option was later eliminated after discussions with the health department and the state. And we're currently negotiating a contract with United Way to administer motel vouchers for the homeless that are awaiting test results or those who've tested positive. And we do expect to have that contract next week. The city's Housing Choice Voucher Program continues to process the homeless referrals under the limited referral-based homeless preference. Although many of the activities in the housing department have been reduced due to the virus, we have placed a priority on moving those who are experiencing homelessness into units where we can. The City County Housing First program continues to house the chronically homeless. And we have a virtual call this afternoon with Sedgwick County, the COC, and the Emergency Management Office to determine further community needs and consider additional programs or projects to be funded out of the CARES Act funds. There are no impacts to the city's general fund. This is a separate, coming from the separate pot of money under the CARES Act. We started down this process before we knew the CARES Act money was coming. And we were originally going to use CDBG, but the fact that we now have ESG funds allows us to move quicker to get this implemented without a substantial amendment to our consolidated plan. And the ESG funding will be used to cover all of the expenses related to this activity. So it is recommended that the council approve the ESG funding allocation in the amount of $60,000 and authorize the necessary signatures. I stand for any questions you have.
There are questions or comments about the item? See none. With that, I will make the motion to recommend action to approve the ESG funding allocation in the amount of $60,000 and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. The Chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson for discussion on the motion.
Thanks, Mayor. A little bit connected and not connected. First,
Councilmember, can you bring your microphone just a little closer to you for those who watch?
First, Sally, I want to say thank you for this report and acknowledge my failure to share a lot of this information to the public. I just share bits and pieces, so thank you for that, and I'm appreciative of all the work that's being done to help our homeless community. My only ask, and why this isn't necessarily connected to the motion, is if we can maybe repeat this for a special video or so just to share to the community, to talk about everything that we're doing for the homeless community and not just this item, but I think that'd be good information for the community if we could do that.
Councilmember, we were planning on highlighting it at the mayor's press briefing on Thursday, and if you want us to video it, we can also work on that too.
Yeah, just to dovetail off the council members' comments, there has been a lot of interest in the details of how the homeless population is receiving services during this crisis. So I acknowledge and agree with the council members' concerns that it would show to our constituents that we are taking those concerns seriously and we responded with action. So we do applaud your department's work in this and the collaborative work of the continuum of care. So the motion has been made and seconded. Is there a further discussion on said motion? See none. With that, we will request the clerk open the roll and that members may cast their vote. The result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
City Manager Performance Evaluation.
So I've never done one of these before.
I would like to.
There we go. Thanks for bailing me out, Vice Mayor. Chair recognizes Vice Mayor Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to start the discussion on this, on the city manager performance evaluation. We met as a council, met in executive session to review the city manager's performance for 2019. And we believe that the city manager's performance deserves standard merit increase. And however, given the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on city finances, council is recommending deferral the city manager's merit increase until such time as there's more clarity on the city's budget. I do want to say that when we sat in the executive session to talk about the city manager's performance, that it was agreed that his performance was very good for 2019, and that we appreciate that, and I know other council members have things that they would like to add to that today.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I just wanted to applaud Mr. Layton for his exceptional service to our community for the last 10 years, and we're certainly lucky to have him. And at no more time than this, truly a fiscal wizard and able to help us think of our budget in different ways to be able to preserve the services and staff that we have. When I was completing the evaluation for Mr. Layton, based on the questions, I reached out to department heads and asked for their input. I reached out to community partners and asked for their input. And I also reached out to state and other local and county municipalities to get their input, and heard a very consistent message of Mr. Layton being just exemplary service and incredible wealth of knowledge. And I feel he's just an outstanding resource also for City Council. So just want to praise Mr. Layton for his great work in our community and his service to the city of Wichita, and I'm a raving fan.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor, and I echo a lot of what Councilmember Tuttle just said. You know, for 5 years now, we've been working together as manager and council member, and I'm amazed how much I continue to learn from you. Thank you so much. This is a tough job as policymakers, but however, you make it very, I don't want to say easy, but you make it more bearable because of your steady, expert oversight of the budget, staff, and operations. And having that trust in you to continue to lead that, I'm grateful that you're with us right now as we go through this process together. So keep up the good work.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Bob, thanks so much. You know, it's got to be extremely easy having 7 bosses and trying to please everybody and trying to really come up with some cohesive policy when we're throwing so many different types of policy decisions at you and things that we'd like to see. We are getting ready to come into a time in our budget that is very similar to when I was elected 8 years ago. And your expertise and your guidance and your collaboration with the council at that point to really come up with some good policies to lead this city forward and make sure that we're fiscally sound and continue to provide core services to the community. We're exemplary then, and I am just extremely confident and not so uneasy that you're on our team with us. And I just want to appreciate everything you do. And I'm just setting that expectation moving forward.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Bob, I too want to echo everything that has been said, so I won't be long-winded since all the great stuff has been said, but thank you for your leadership through a lot of our difficult times and your thoughtful and collaborative approach. I really appreciate it, and always being open with me personally, and I know you are with my colleagues as well, so I appreciate that.
Is there any more discussion? Not, the floor return to the Vice Mayor Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to summarize by saying that I think that the council has shown their appreciation for the manager in terms of his 2019 performance. So thank you, Bob, for all that you do. So I would like to move that the city council approve the city manager's performance evaluation and defer a merit increase.
Second.
Motion has been made by the Vice Mayor and seconded by Councilmember Tuttle. Is there discussion on a motion? See none, the clerk will open up the roll and members will cast their vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk,
Councilmember appointments and comments.
are there appointments at this time? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple of appointments. I wanted to reappoint Tommy Benford to the Community Services Block Grant. For my District Advisory Board, I would like to appoint Seth Windsor and Nikayla Pack. And for the Wichita Employee Retirement System, I'd like to appoint Stephen Coberly.
Are there other appointments? We do these all at once. Councilmember Clendenin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have quite a list of appointments. It will not be everything, but it will be close. I do have a list, Madam Clerk, for you. To the Animal Control Advisory Board, I'd like to reappoint Vanessa Christopherson. To the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board, George Theo Harris. To the Board of Park Commissioners, Hoyt Hillman. I'd like to appoint to the Community Services Block Grant Review Committee for the private sector, Paul Farha. To the Community Services Block Grant Review Committee, public sector, Bruce Gass. The District 3 Advisory Board, and I'll give you all my advisory board members here at once. Gerald Henry, Michael Loop, Jared Cirillo, Bruce Gass, Ron Tracy, Catherine Johnson, Marco Alcocer, Cindy Miles, Daisy Oliver, and then Historic Preservation Board, Elena Engel, Library Board, Lauren Hirsch and Shelby Peterson, Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, Cindy Miles, Police and Fire Retirement Board Trustees, Robert Decker, Wichita Airport Advisory Board, Paul Davis, and Wichita Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees, Carla Burghardt. Sedgwick County's Board of Zoning Appeals is Cindy Miles, because she's part of the Planning Commission, and Wichita Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board, Ron Tracy. That'll be it for today.
Further appointments to boards? If there are none, then I will
Mayor,
make.
I just wanted to, I got a late comment regarding the city manager's performance evaluation. I just thought I'd share it. Lonnie Wright said that Layton has been a very good city manager.
That's big praise coming from Lonnie.
Thank you, Lonnie.
He's quite critical. So back to the appointments. Is there any other appointments to the boards? See none. With that, I'll make the motion to accept the appointments as read. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor Claycomb. Members will cast their ballots or votes since the clerk has opened the rolls. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass and members are appointed to said boards. Back on to comments. There are comments for the good of the body. See none. With that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's been a motion and seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their votes because we don't do voice vote here. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. We are adjourned. Thank you all for following along online, and thank you all for being here.